So what's the definition of burst damage? That's the definition of burst damage. Hello, my fellow sorcerers. How are you doing this fine day in hell? I imagine you're utterly destroying everything, because of course we had the foresight to pick the best class. But what is the best class without the best build? Or at least the best build you should be using right now until we get to sort of Ultra Endgame and can start doing some really fun stuff with all that happens there. So without further ado, let's get into this. Essentially, you will be able to autopilot with basically one ability through the entirety of, well, the story and into Nightmare. So I'll be taking you through it level by level, what to get when, what legendary aspects to go for and where to get them, an actual playstyle guide, just generally everything you could want to know to pilot this one-man army of a build. The bullet points, though, are thus. You will keep enemies permanently stunned. You will keep enemies permanently frozen. You will be critting with nearly every attack. Those three things stacked together gives you near plus 200% damage amps on everything you do, and you are doing a lot. Lash is the engine, and the speed at which it comes out and the rate at which it both crits and stuns unlocks a mountain of synergistic passives that just delete even bosses on Nightmare as soon as you get there. This absolutely obliterated the capstone dungeon to unlock Nightmare at level 45, and it has absolutely shredded me to level 50 without having to really think about it, because it's incredibly mobile, safe, and tanky with constant barriers and CC keeping you healthy. It's honestly perhaps a little bit too good. Beginning then with Lash, of course, as the core of the build and what you'll be spending about 90% of your time doing, so you better love this lightning whip. Fortunately, it's super satisfying, so hopefully you will. I'll try and kind of go over how everything interconnects and works as we evolve down the tree, but for now we just want to upgrade our Lash and upgrade our Lash and upgrade our Lash. We really are just going to be spamming it, and we don't need to grab anything else yet. Finish it off with Enhanced, and now we are over here at our defensives. Then we want to grab Teleport, so we have that burst movement and utility. We want to grab the Ice Armor, and we want to grab the Frost Nova. Then we take the Enhanced and the Mystical Frost Nova. This means we're going to be able to cast it a lot, and also it will vulnerable enemies, which means they take 20% more damage, which is lovely for us because you can stun and vulnerable at the same time, which leads to some delicious stacking once we get the full build rolling. Now we've managed to get over here, so we can grab Hydra, and then we can grab Enhanced Hydra. Now we've got 4 heads of shooting. The damage isn't the best, but it is a good set and forget. It lasts a while, and more importantly, with Summoned Hydra here, it is our source of consistently putting fire on our enemies, and it's also fantastic boss damage to just chip away. This fire is important because eventually we will end up with Devouring Blaze doing more crit damage to enemies that are on fire, and as this build crits constantly, this is a huge damage amp, so we need some sort of burning here, and Hydra is the best way, as I just kind of set it and forget it once every 10 seconds or so. At this point, you should be about approaching level 15, so we want to get Fireball, as that is our first and most important enchantment slot, as it quite literally just detonates screens of enemies, and is both deliciously satisfying and kind of ridiculously potent. It honestly might be the single most powerful enchantment slot we have. At this point then, we can grab Glinting Arclash just to have it and start reducing cooldowns when we do hit our stunned enemies. Then we want to get our Enhanced Ice Armor and Shimmering Ice Armor, so we keep getting freezes when we do get attacked, and can keep essentially stacking stun on top of Frozen and Vulnerable, which just obliterates everything it affects. Then we can come down here and grab Static Discharge. This is just so we can get to Shocking Impact, which is a huge source of damage for the build. Again, we are stunning enemies constantly. That's the whole point here. Stunning so we can crit more, and then critting more so we can stun more in this amazing feedback loop. This means every time we stun, we just blow them up with lightning. Now we can head back up and get ourselves Enhanced Teleport, which will unlock the next tier for us to take. We can get our ultimate now in Unstable Currents, which is the huge potential of this to essentially kill bosses in about 10 seconds. Then we grab the Enhanced Prime Unstable Currents, because attack speed is everything to this build, so we can Arc Lash as fast as humanly possible. This then opens up Coursing Currents, which is the revving engine of what we're doing here. This will increase our crit chance by 3% every time we hit with Arc Lash until we get a crit. We're hitting constantly. This is what makes us crit constantly and get all the benefits on top of, just the huge amounts of burst damage from critting constantly. Then we can get Electrocution, which will help your survivability. Enemies do less to you. That's really, really nice. And then Convulsions. This is fantastic. So now a lucky hit to stun enemies for a long, long time is 3 seconds every time we hit them with a shock skill. Again, the feedback loop of stun to crit to crit to stun to stun to crit to stun, it just kind of speaks for itself. Now we want to get one more point in so we can get to our signature passive, and fortunately we have one final upgrade of our teleport to get in Shimmering Teleport, just to get a little bit more survivability if our teleport doesn't quite get us out of danger, or if we use it to teleport onto the spot to use our second enhancement slot. Our second enhancement slot should go to Arc Lash. When you use a cooldown, enemies around you are stunned for 0.7 seconds. The stun isn't the longest, but our build involves lots of cooldowns. This is what means that when we press teleport, we stun everyone around us. When we press Ice Armor, we stun everyone around us. When we press Frost Nova, we stun everyone around us. This means on bosses, we can build their stun meter ridiculously quickly by just spamming everything on top of them, and in packs of enemies, we can AoE stun everyone, and if everyone is AoE stunned, when we swipe them with Arc Lash, for every single enemy that we hit, we're taking 0.25 seconds off every one of your cooldowns, which then means the cooldowns of Ice Armor, Frost Nova, Teleport, and of course our Ultimate 2 get powered down, so we can then use them again to restun the enemies and reduce the cooldowns, and you see how this kind of just endlessly goes. We get to just spam these awesome survival abilities, but they feed into our damage with what we're doing here. Now we can get our signature passive, and it is Vire's Mastery. This essentially is just, hey, do 25% more damage and take 25% less damage, just for doing your thing, spamming Arc Lash. Yes, you need to crit to get that amped bonus, but again, we're critting all the time. You will crit more often than once every 3 seconds, so this is just a general, you are 25% stronger, which is obviously a ludicrously strong passive. Now you kind of have the core of the build, and you'll be about level 32 or so if you've gotten a few extra ability points from your renown. We can start filling in some fun little extras at this point. You want to grab yourself Elemental Attunement, you want a couple ranks of it, so that we can crit, and then again, reset the cooldown on Frost Nova, Ice Armor, and Teleport once every 10 seconds, resulting in us being able to use them again, AoE stunning everyone again, reducing our cooldowns again, and you see how it keeps going. Then we want to come down here and grab one rank of Align the Elements. This will just make you, not die when we get hit by elites and bosses. Then we can get Protection. This will give us 30% of our health as a shield every time we press, yes, Frost Nova, Ice Armor, and Teleport. Stacking with the Ice Armor shield, this makes us so incredibly hard to kill, and until you get get to the real harder world tiers, and even then you still can, it essentially means you can just stand there and kill and not really move or dodge anything that isn't that threatening, and it just feels wonderful. And then, of course, because lucky hits are such a big part of our build, both from the elemental attunement here and our lucky hit convulsions, we want to then amp our lucky hit chance with precision magic at all 3 ranks. Finish our elemental attunement just so that happens as often as possible. So, of course, when we are in our unstable currents, we are consistently throwing out all of our shock spells. Specifically then, this means we end up churning out lightning spears like crazy. Like, you'll have about 5 of them on screen at any one time zipping around doing their thing. Now, when it casts it via your ultimate, it will cast your current lightning spear as you have got it chosen if you do have any points in it. So we want lightning spear, we want enhanced lightning spear, which means when it crits, it has a higher chance to crit, and that just keeps going, so your now free army of spears will just be consistently critting and employing all of that crit synergy, of which is, yes, lightning spear will stun for 2 seconds when it crits. So during unstable currents, you have got 5 lightning spears on average zipping round, critting everyone, stunning everyone on loop, on repeat, and the damage that adds up to is silly. Especially because we then take Conjuration Mastery, which means for every single lightning spear during that sweet unstable currents, and of course for each Hydra too, we do 3% more damage, which basically means around 15 to 21% more damage during our ultimate burst, which is what shreds bosses, and this is really nice to have. I think very much the cherry on top for this build, the pièce de résistance, is this extra 30% increased crit damage to enemies that are on fire. You can get this earlier if you want to support the Hydra, but this really does sort of tie a neat little bow on this package. Now, of course, I still have a handful more points to get. I would pump up Hydra to have it do just that bit more damage, as it is up constantly, and on bosses it will be a huge passive source of just slowly burning them down. And then I would also get the rest of Electrocution just to increase our survivability, which is massively useful when we start getting into World Tier 3 Nightmare and beyond. But of course, you can do whatever works in your mind as you get used to this playstyle. So, enchantments then. I mentioned them, of course, but let's quickly slot them in. We want Fireball at level 15 as soon as you can. This will just wipe screens of enemies, and you will honestly feel like it's a little bit too good when it does. It's so silly effective and worth just kind of almost, it's not like it synergizes with the rest of the build, it's just that good to have this popping and clearing waves of small enemies for you. And then, of course, the Arc Lash, which will give all of our cooldowns the AoE stun. This is represented quite visually when you press something like Frost Armor and you see that kind of blast of electricity around you. Everyone in that will get stunned, and given we are just at melee range whipping our Arc Lash back and forth, yeah, that works really well. So we can be doing this, pressing Frost Novas, stunning everyone, freezing them. They're now vulnerable, frozen, and stunned, taking like 60% more damage, and just letting us utterly obliterate them. And generally, when it comes to playing this, it's as simple as can be. You keep Hydra up, just have it there. Whenever it runs out, put it back. That's it. The rest of the time is just literally spamming Arc Lash and dodging abilities on the ground that you don't want to stand in, but a lot of the time you can just stand in them because you have a ridiculous amount of barriers. So if you've got a group of enemies, teleport on top of them, stun them all. Of course, teleport is your get out of jail free card, and the unstoppable on it will mean if you are CC'd, stunned, feared, etc., press this, get out of the way so you don't get deleted by the higher end enemies. It does have ridiculous range on it and will speed you clear of dungeons because it will just get you round them faster, but in a fight, just teleport on top of the group of enemies, do the damage, stun everyone, and of course, keep remembering that when we have our stun go off, we are triggering shocking impact. So these little AoE stuns that the Arc Lash enhancement is constantly giving giving us is mass damaging everyone around us, which is absolutely lovely. So you just stood there, you're spamming Arc Lash, you put your barrier on because you're taking a bit of damage, you stun everyone, you teleport to the spot, put another barrier on, stun everyone again, get our Nova, stun everyone again, put another barrier, stun everyone again, put another barrier, and it just keeps on going like thus. Your highest damage output, of course, is have the Hydra for the burn, have your ultimate on, spam your Arc Lash out, and then just cycle through your other abilities as you do so, and the entire room will be crumbled to dust without you really having to even think about it. Look at all those delicious lightning spears doing all that they do for free. And you will find that the cooldown of Unstable Currents comes off really quickly thanks to Arc Lash's cooldown reduction, because you're basically permanently swiping stunned enemies about 80% of the time. Hopefully then that kind of makes sense. We're permanently stunning enemies with all of our abilities, we have massive amounts of crit chance with all of our shock, the crit supports the stun supports the crit, loads of mobility, loads of survivability, and it very much gets the job done in a very simple, straightforward way for leveling. So to add to this then, I want to share with you the 3 best aspects to go out and get, the 3 legendary powers that you can unlock via the dungeons to keep applying to this build. You want to apply them to your rings and your neck. You can put them on any rings and neck and then just leave it there essentially until level 50 plus. You don't have to update them, they're not that important. Keeping your weapon and your other armor slots up to date item power wise is where it's at. Your jewelry can just be legendary power stat sticks essentially. Rapid aspect then is perhaps the most important, as attacking fast is the entire point here. The more Arc Lashes per second we can get off, the exponentially better things become. It is for this reason that ideally you want to go with Wand and Focus instead of Staff, as it attacks significantly faster, which results in a much better performance for this build. Well, the difference isn't insane, but every little does help. Don't use a Wand and Focus over a better Staff, but if the options are comparable, choose Wand and Focus and you'll be having a good time. So, rapid aspect then comes from the buried halls in the dry steppes located here, and it's definitely one I would recommend getting as soon as possible. Next up then, we want to get a hold of another very core key element of this, and one that will skyrocket your output, and that is aspect of control. We are keeping everyone permanently stunned and frozen, and this just amps up your damage massively while attacking them. From the Sunken Library, located right here, and again a bit of a trek from the Fractured Peaks, but a trek worth making early. Lastly then, my recommendation would be aspect of might. We are essentially only using our basic skill, and this means we're just going to be taking 20% less damage sort of permanently as a benefit of that, and it will help your survivability, especially as this does require us to play a lot closer to the enemies, nearly melee, as opposed to most other of our builds. This one then is unlocked by doing the Dark Ravine in the Dry Steppes, which is located here, and it's, well, a little bit closer than the other one, but again, it's still very worth going out your way for. And again, just leave these 3 on 3 pieces, and essentially you can just keep them for most of the leveling story process. As far as further legendary effects, well, a lot of things tend to be useful. If you get the increased basic skill damage while you're at full mana, that's worthwhile, as we don't spend too much, just a Hydra every 10 seconds, or perhaps like this one, the 2 Frost Nova charges at the cost of a higher cooldown. That doesn't really matter because we're resetting the cooldown with crits and resetting the cooldown with Arc Lash, so having 2 to cycle back to back, especially against bosses, is lovely. And as a general rule, a bit that you really want to look out for on your gear is anything that does give you attack speed. Again, more arc lashes per second, more better time had for you. Outside of that, don't be afraid of dexterity, as that does give us crit chance, and that's wonderful to have too. But as always, you're leveling. You're going to be replacing gear constantly. Don't focus too much on the actual individual powers that they bring, but of course, more damage to controlled or vulnerable or stunned enemies, anything that just plays into what we're doing. Killing random packs of enemies in dungeons and around the place is kind of very straightforward here. Bosses, on the other hand, there is a kind of a knack to it, though it's nothing too crazy. The goal here is to stun the boss as soon and as fast as possible, and the way to do that is, of course, to frost over them, to teleport on top of them, to ice armor next to them, and to get as many arc lashes off as possible while Hydra is tickling away at them and get that stun. Now, you want to make it so that when the stun happens, you have three things in place: a Hydra fresh and up, a Frost Nova off cooldown, and most importantly, Unstable Current off cooldown. As soon as that stun happens, hit Unstable Currents, the Hydra's already up, hit Frost Nova, and then just hold left click and arc lash your heart out and watch their health quite literally drain away. Then repeat as needed, though you shouldn't need more than 2 stun cycles for any given boss, and even then only on World Tier 3 onwards. On 2 and below, you will probably kill them in the first stun every single time. It's just that much damage when everything gets rolling. Alright then, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's pretty much it. That's kind of what we're getting, where and why. I will let the completed tree play out for you here if you want another look, another check, but ultimately it's a ruthlessly efficient and weirdly simple build that lets you just cycle defensive and mobility skills, spam a basic attack, and then keep a Hydra up, and every now and then go nuclear with your Unstable Currents. It just kind of flows. It makes sense. You don't have to do anything too tricky. You don't have to do anything too micromanagey. You can just plow through everything until you get to later into the end game and have more tools, more legendaries, more items to actually think about doing something a little bit more involved and unique and perhaps even fun if this isn't the way for you. But I found it an absolutely charming time in my journey, and of course, well, I'm about to be level 50, and it's only been a day as of me, well, saying these words. The guide and build for Druid should already be up. If not, it's about to be, and then Necromancer will be later today too, so look out for that, and of course all of the Diablo guides and goodness you could want going forward. Please like and subscribe, hit the bell if this has helped you, it means a lot, and I hope you're all having a great time so far in this shockingly smooth launch. I don't know what's happened, but look, let's just all go with it. Alright, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.